Okay, today I want to talk about the future of recruitment, and in particular the role of artificial intelligence and technology in the future of recruitment. And to help me untangle this super interesting topic, I'm joined today by Frida Olli, who is the CEO and co-founder of Pymetrics, one of the pioneers in the space of using AI in recruitment. And I'm also joined by Moorthy, who is the executive vice president at Imfosys, and you're the global head of the education, training, and assessment there, and also the head of delivery operations for the US, Canada, and LATAM. So first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So where are you joining us? Where are you joining us from today, Frida?
Because of my travel snafus, I'm in a hotel room in Seattle.
Very good. And how about you, Tan?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Excellent. And I'm just north of London. So, Frida, maybe we can start with you, and maybe you can give us a little background of yourself and how you ended up co-founding Pymetrics.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Dr. Frida Olli. Prior to starting Pymetrics, I was an academic scientist at Harvard and MIT, cognitive scientist. I transitioned out of science by going to the MBA program at Harvard, and it was there that I saw recruiting firsthand. And what I realized was that people's resumes were very easy to access and understand. It was really their soft skills. What makes them tick as a person? What is their attentional profile? Are they altruistic or self-interested? Are they risk averse or risk taking? All of those things we consider soft skills that were really what was lacking and what recruiters were really struggling to understand. So that was what we had been spending decades in the lab assessing in people using novel research techniques. And so that's how the Pymetrics platform came to be, was developing the technology that we had been using in the lab for research purposes to measure cognitive, social, and emotional attributes in people for the purposes of all talent decisions across the talent lifecycle. And that's how the light bulb for Pymetrics went off.
Very good, exciting. And Tan, the reason you are joining us today is because you are using Pymetrics as part of your recruitment process and really reimagining how you recruit and educate the future workforce, really. So maybe you can give us a brief background of yourself as well.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to both of you. I've been in the IT industry for about 3 decades plus now. And my current role, I head our global education, training, and assessment, like you mentioned. I also have the responsibility for delivery operations for all of the Americas. So in both these roles, I have a lot to do with talent. As the head of education, I have the responsibility for the competence development of our global workforce. We have 290,000 of them across 50 plus countries. And I also have responsibility in the US for talent assimilation, development, and overall progression of talent. So talent is at the center of everything I need to do, and that's where the partnership with Pymetrics is critical to get the right talent in place.
Very good. So Frida, how does AI recruitment work? Because when we look at this space, there are lots of people see it as a scary thing. They feel that if you then suddenly speak to an AI and you use AIs to assess certain criteria, that actually take some of the human element out of recruitment. And at the same time, there are huge challenges around fairness and bias that have been in this industry for so long. So how does it work in practice?
Sure. So, AI is a little bit like electricity. There's so many different use cases and applications that it's hard to really say AI is anything as a whole. And I absolutely understand some of the concerns, because I think when we're using AI, for example, to extract facial features in video interviews and remove human beings from that judgment process, then, I too might have concerns, right? The way that we use artificial intelligence is really at the very top of the recruiting funnel, where it's not a person-to-person interaction. It's you're dropping your CV, and then we're allowing you to showcase your soft skill profile to the person who's going to make a decision as to whether they would like to interview you. So it's just additional information that you can provide about yourself that actually could showcase you in a completely different and potentially better light, right? So we're not replacing human to human contact. We're augmenting your ability to really show how unique you are as a human being, right? The way that we have created our soft skills AI platform, we have actually been leaders in removing bias from that equation as well. So we actually have published on this. We've done an independent audit, and we really have been pioneers in the field of showing that we have no gender or ethnic bias in our algorithms. So not only can you showcase yourself in a new way, in addition to whatever your CV says, but you can be ensured that that data is not going to work against you if you're a female or if you're an underrepresented minority. So we feel very, very strongly that if you're not replacing human to human interaction, and if you're allowing that AI to actually make it more likely that you're going to look at diverse talent, which is exactly how Imfosys and many of our other clients are using it. They're actually screening in people that might otherwise be excluded by the CV process, which, quite frankly, if we're very honest about it, is very exclusionary, right? If you don't go to the right school, if you don't have the right name, I mean, they've shown that just changing the name from John to something that's African-American sounding like Jamal, or something that's Hispanic sounding like Juan, basically John gets 10 interviews with that same exact CV, Jamal gets 7, and Juan gets 8, right? So I think we have to be honest and say, if we can actually use AI to improve the likelihood that underrepresented minorities and women are going to be included, I think that's a win.
Very good. So can you give us some examples of how
Oh, sure.
Of what sort of soft skills you are assessing and how this works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we look at things like attention, decision-making, generosity, altruism, emotional sensitivity, risk preferences. All of these things are very linked to work behaviors. So let's take attention, for example. I'm a little biased to action, means I sort of jump in, blurt things out, and so on. That's very adaptive for an entrepreneur. Other people will fall more on the methodical end of the spectrum, right? They make good engineers, they make good accountants, and so on and so forth. Those are the types of things that we measure that are very, very hard, if not impossible, to measure on a CV. And they can actually showcase people in a completely different light that makes somebody stand out as a good fit for something that their CV might not say that about themselves.
And how does that work in practice? So how do you, can
Yeah,
you use an example?
Yeah, sure. So we put people through a series of behavioral activities. We call them games, but they're essentially activities that you do on the computer or your smartphone. They're very short. You get some feedback, you learn something about yourself, and then that data is collected by our algorithms to give you a profile of what makes you unique from a soft skills perspective. And by the way, that profile is given to every single person that goes through Pymetrics. It's not a secret. It's very explainable and it's very accessible to everyone. And it's something that they can use to sort of learn about themselves. And we often get people posting that profile on LinkedIn and saying, wow, I just went through this application process and I learned something great about myself. So
very good. So let's bring Tan back into this conversation then. So Infosys is using Pymetrics. So why and how did you start to work together?
Great. So let me actually start by giving some background on how we got initiated into this relationship. If you look at what is going on with the technology skills, the lifespan of how long they're relevant is reducing on the one hand. And then we have automation that is taking away roles that people can do. What that means is, in the future of work, you need to figure out ways in which people can coexist with machines. And that's the critical need. Now, if that needs to happen, then you have to recruit the right talent. So when you look at that context, it's important, therefore, to bring in people not based on their degrees, but based on their skills. With all of that, we launched Reskill and Restart, which is an initiative to help those displaced and unemployed by COVID to gain new skills to accelerate their transitions back into the workforce. And that's how this started. And as a consortium led by Imfosys, Pymetrics, Merit America, Perscolas, Reventure, Vozio Enterprises, all of this, we created Reskill and Restart as a free online platform that connects employees and employers and training for job seekers. So that's the whole context of how this all came together. And so while Infosys has Wingspan, the engine, Pymetrics is the starting point of that interaction for a prospective job seeker. That's how we
Very
put
good.
it all together.
And this is great context and goes very well with what I believe is going to happen. That in the future, the role of degrees and certificates will become less important, and the softer skills, that the skills that really make us humans, will become much more important, and our ability to work alongside intelligent AIs and smart robots will hopefully make the workforce of the future even more human. Do you, what are your views on that?
I can jump in. I mean, I absolutely think that, more and more, to what Tan is saying, people are moving away from degrees and and sort of traditional credentialing, and moving more towards, do you have the actual skills that are needed to do the job, right? Skills-based hiring, right? Those skills can be hard skills, right? And we can put people through training classes like with Reskill and Restart to acquire those hard skills. They can also be soft skills, right? So soft skills are known to be an important factor of success on a job, right? And so the more we can sort of break a job down into the component hard and soft skills, rather than just saying, oh, if you have a degree in engineering, therefore you will be X, Y, and Z. I think the more we can make those opportunities accessible to everybody, I think the more equitable we can make these hiring and reskilling processes, and the better we can make the labor markets function for employers, right? Because right now there's such a shortage of a lot of these skills. I mean, look at nursing, for example, right? And that's not going to go away. And until we can find a smart, technology-driven solution to make these labor market inequalities even out, I think we're all going to lose. So I think I completely understand the concerns around AI. It's incumbent upon tech providers like ourselves to prove that we are equitable and have that documentation. But once we can do that, I think that it's critical for society to start leveraging some of these platforms like Reskill and Restart, like Pymetrics, that can really help with these broad labor market challenges.
Very good. So what do you think are some of the skills that companies will be looking for in the future? That what we are seeing at the moment is that technology and AI is doing two things: is augmenting our existing jobs, is also to some extent displacing jobs. So what we need to make sure is that we have people that can retrain on a continuous basis and keep their skills up to date. So any recommendations of some of the skills that maybe Infosys is looking for in the future? And then maybe, Frida, you can talk about some of the skill matrices that your customers are looking for. So Tan, what skills do you want to bring into Infosys for the future?
Absolutely. So I think at the core of this, it's important for people to have learnability, right? The ability to continuously have the hunger to learn, but also the ability to learn, and which is where this assessment of their core characteristics is very important, because it is not their degree that will help them to get where they want to go. It is that desire and the ability to learn new things that will make the difference. And so if you look at it from that perspective, while the flavor of the month could be different, there are some core things that have changed in terms of technologies that will be required for people to know. For example, and a simple way of looking at it is what I've been referring to as the ABCDs of the new IT, which are AI, big data, cloud, and digital. These are going to stay for a long time to come. And the individual's capability to pick each one of them as relevant for the job at hand will make a difference in staying relevant to the profession. But the starting point is that desire to learn and a demonstrated ability to learn new things. And I think that's what lays the foundation. And
Yeah,
companies have the obligation to create that platform to create that reskilling and upskilling.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So this lifelong learning and the desire to keep up to date, because one of the things we're seeing is that the half-life of skills is reducing all the time as we're going through this increasingly accelerated digital transformation. Frida, what do you see across your customers? What are they looking for?
Yeah, I mean, look, I completely agree with everything Tan said. And I would just add that what is amazing about the ABCDs, I like that, Tan, I might steal that, of where we are now, is that everything can be personalized and customized, right? So gone are the days where, because I get this question all the time, well, what are the 3 soft skills that people need? I'm like, that's not a thing, right? The soft skills you need to be a successful entrepreneur versus a successful accountant versus a successful CIA agent are completely different, right? And so there is no such thing as like one particular, soft skill. And what's beautiful about a digital process and artificial intelligence enhanced process is we can be very prescriptive and personalized in our recommendations, right? And so when we think about learnability is very context specific, right? I might not have the soft skill profile to learn how to be a good accountant because, I'm biased to action and not very methodical, but actually to learn how to be an entrepreneur, I have the learnability to do that. So I agree with Tan that people have to show the willingness and the ability to continually evolve and learn, but then that's very context specific. So I just want to say that because I think gone are the 1980s version of, oh, if you're this, and this, you'll be successful everywhere. And if you're not, then you're kind of out of luck. It's extremely personalized and everything is very micro specific. And we have to kind of think of it that way. And technology enables us to do that.
Very good. So, Tan, what do you think will be the future of recruiting for Imfosys? How will recruiting change over the coming years for you?
Yeah. So I think if you look at the technology landscape and the technology industry, there are 2 challenges, and that's normally classified as the talent gap or the talent shortage. In my view, I think it has to be broken down into 2 aspects. One is the creation of net new talent, and the other is the upskilling of existing talent. Both of those have to be addressed to create a talent pool that is required for the future. And this is not just for tech companies, because every company is a tech company now. Everybody uses one of those ABCD technologies, if not all of them. And therefore, everybody needs the technology capability, and that can only happen if we create net new talent. And the net new talent is not going to come from people who are going through a 4-year degree today. And which is why we need to look out for people who are in different professions that want to make a move into IT, into technology, and create them a pathway to get there. If you take all of that in total, then recruitment will therefore have to now look out for people who have the same things, the ability and the desire to learn new things, and a demonstrated capability of saying, I have transferred these skills from my last job into this profession or this industry. So transferable skills will be important, and recruitment will have to constantly look out for means by which we can identify those people who carry those transferable skills,
Yep.
and so that they can learn and become the talent of the future.
Yep.
Very good. Frida, anything to add?
No, I mean, I'm completely in agreement. And I think that, that is, I think, the beauty of more of this skill-based view of human beings, right? Is that we are saying there's such a thing as a talent passport, right? And that could consist of your current hard skills. It could consist of your soft skills. And that is something that you can carry with you. That's sort of the way we think about it at Pymetrics. People can have their own soft skill profile that they actually can digitally carry with them. And that is a critical piece along with your hard skill, ability to showcase certain hard skills that will make you perennially occupiable depending on, how the labor market changes, right? And I think we have to anticipate that because, I mean, just look at the world today, right? It's messier than it ever has been. And so I think we have to, look at people that way, and also give them the power to feel like they have more agency in this search for the right occupation. I mean, that's another thing we see with the Great Resignation is just, people are free agents now, right? There's no such thing as loyalty to companies. And so I think the more and more we can really empower people to make the right decisions and be in charge of their career paths with the skills-based approach, I think the better we will all be served as a society.
Yeah, and to some extent, I think sometimes people get scared when you talk about the ABCDs, as you've referred to them, because they are just to some extent threatening their jobs. But I had a recent conversation with the Imfosys president, Ravi Kumar, and I was really delighted by the fact that he was seeing this very positively, saying, actually, we are offering people that have been displaced by technology a new route in, because we're not recruiting for what they've done in the past, we're recruiting for potential. So what do you think are the benefits then of leveraging technology to reskill and recruit workers, Tan?
Yeah, so today's need is not only for good talent, but also a diverse talent pool. Because nobody has clarity on problems to be solved. There is a lot of work to be done to identify problems first and then create solutions. That can only happen if you have multiple perspectives coming into a situation, which means diversity is a very important need for today's talent pool. And that can only come if you go cast your net wide and broad to include the entire community into your workforce. That means you're not going to get people who have just a 4-year degree or a master's degree or whatever. You have to go to people from all kinds of background. And that is where the need to use technology to make it easy for them to get there. Technology to help them identify their own skills and flares and things they want to do. Technology to help them learn at their own pace. Both of those are critical. Create that confidence in people that they can now join this workforce. And companies have to be open to the idea of recruiting for those skills and not only look for what used to be a standard template of degree from a certain place.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Bernard, I think, look, so when steam engines were invented, women were told not to ride them because they went so fast that the uteruses of women could fly out of their bodies, right? So there's always this concern when new technology comes around that it's going to have these horrible unintended consequences that we can't foresee now, right? And I think, unfortunately, what that is missing, and Joe Fuller at HBS has done some great research on this, is that automation has been part of the workforce picture for decades now. So the minute we started having platforms that could send 250 candidates for every open role, we started having sort of brute force, rule-based tools like keyword searches and resumes that started sifting through applicants. Those sort of brute force tools are used by 99% of companies, and those have really negative impacts on diversity, as Tan was saying, because they're looking for those keywords that people can only acquire through sort of having certain type of background, right? So I think AI then comes along and everyone fixates on, the fact that Elon Musk and all these other people are saying, oh my gosh, angry AI robots are going to take over the world and you need to be really scared. But that actually, unfortunately, muddies the picture, because current technology, this rule-based stuff, is actually very detrimental. And again, Joe Fuller's work on missing workers, highly recommend. But secondly, AI can be far more targeted and beneficial. I mean, the AI that we deploy has tremendous diversity impact across all companies, and every single company that uses us, Imfosys included, has seen improvements in socioeconomic, gender, and ethnic diversity. And it's because we're not this brute force keyword search, sort of resume parser that really is far worse than some of these more sophisticated AI systems. So again, I think AI has been given a bad name, not only by Elon Musk, but also by folks that are sort of doing video facial analysis and freaking people out. But that's not the mainstay of what AI means. The mainstay of what AI can do is really far more powerful and actually equilibrating the picture rather than making it worse. Again, we as technologists have to prove that. We have to show that. We have to be open about our platforms and our data, and we can't just say, "Oh, trust us, people. We're going to be fine." But I do want to sort of put out this message that that it definitely has an equilibrating potential, and we've seen this over and over, not only at Pymetrics but with other platforms that kind of have the same principles with which they build AI.
Very good. So how does the actual recruitment process now looks like, Tan? So I guess there's still some level of AI reading a CV. Then you have a level of some of the assessments or games, as you call them. So how does it work in practice?
Yeah, so first, I think it's important for the hiring managers to be educated to say, start looking for the potential in the individual and not what you always traditionally looked for when resumes came along. Right? That's the starting point. So, and then comes this whole process, like you laid out, of one saying, does the individual themselves apply by saying, these are the skills I have, this is my interest, and that's where an engine like Pymetrics can help them sort out what they want to do. And then for us to, at the back end, to say, given what you want to do and what we have, or the gaps between what you want to do and what you know, here is the learning, right? So, for example, the Wingspan platform that we have, the learning engine, we've created Springboard as a mechanism for people in educational institutions to go through and learn themselves, not necessarily to join Infosys, but in general, for them to raise their own capabilities. And so all of those become channels for recruitment. And the final piece is also about recruiting, what I talked about earlier, for not looking for degrees, but for skills. So creating an apprenticeship program. Through the program, for example, we've had somebody who was an Amazon driver now working on IT projects because he took the challenge to learn, go through the apprenticeship program, and earn whatever is required from a competence perspective to get into an upward mobile job. And those are examples of how things are changing from people that you bring on board in talent acquisition.
So what is the role of traditional CVs and resumes then in this process?
Well, I think it's the same as what we used to do with the visiting card, right? To say, here is my name and here is how you reach out to me, right?
Very good. So
it's a long business.
Yeah, so go ahead.
I was going to say it's just a lengthy business card at this point.
So in what role do you think AI and technology then has in helping us to address this massive skills shortage that we are seeing at the moment? It's a bizarre situation at the moment that there's so many open jobs across the world, really, and people just don't seem to have the skills to fill them.
Yeah. So, Tan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But one point that I kind of want to make is, so there's a platform called HiredScore, if you guys have ever heard of it. And they do this really great thing where they basically take your job, criteria, and they actually show, look, if you didn't have 3 years experience, but you only had 2, or if you didn't have this, here's the much broader talent pool you could be accessing. So I would say that part of the skills shortage is just people are putting these bullet points in job descriptions that they may not even, who is that? Has anyone actually tested that those things are necessary? Did we just cut and paste them from last year's job description, right? So there's so many contributions to the skills mismatch or the skills shortage. And I think we have to look at each one systematically, like, in the case of HiredScore, do we really need all of these requirements, or can we get by with only half of them, or changing them, or something like that? So there isn't one magic silver bullet that I think is going to fix it. But what I will say is that intelligent, equitably, AI platforms that have been built to have no bias in their algorithms and can show that and can prove that to the broader public, and have these creative solutions, like Pymetrics looks at soft skills, HiredScore validates whether you need some of these hard skills, are really important contributions to how we can make this skills gap go away. And then obviously platforms like Wingspan and this broader ecosystem of training providers can then also train folks. But again, I'm just going to come back to it's a multi-layer cake approach to putting technology stacks together that can then address this problem holistically. That's my thought. What do you think, Tan?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the key is that it is a multi-layer cake
Yes.
stack. That's what it is about.
Definitely.
And so from a technology perspective, how it can help the individual is not only in terms of identifying the capabilities that they have or they want to acquire, but also showing them what is possible.
Yep.
If you look at the big data that's available about people and how they have been successful, and you can show that to individuals and say you can get from where you are to
Yep.
here because
Yep.
this has happened in the past, that is something that technology can do. And
Yes.
that can help raise the confidence of people who are afraid to get into the ABCDs or any place because
Yes.
they don't know what is possible.
Yep.
And most people have no role models, and therefore that is the role technology can play to
For
help
sure.
people understand that, choose this path, and here are the enablers for you to get to where you want to.
Yep.
Very good. So what are your future hopes or predictions then for the world of recruitment, Frida?
My future hopes is that we as an industry make the decision that we have to be more transparent and explainable whenever we're using technology, and not fight that, but really embrace that. Because I think that's the only way that people become comfortable with using some of this technology. So that's my hope, and that more technology providers start to provide the level of transparency and also design principles that lead to equitable outcomes. So that's my hope. And then I think with those initiatives, we can hope that things will be improved. So as a small aside, I was recently nominated to the National AI Advisory Committee, which was very exciting. And one of the hopes that I have for that is that it will that we can use technology in a way. And sorry, nominations have not been announced, so it's fiercely contested, and hopefully I will get a slot. I shouldn't say it like it's a done deal, but my hope is that if I were to be able to join that committee, it would be a place where we could really advocate for fair, equitable technology, but that also serves the needs of businesses. Because I think too often they're juxtaposed. It's sort of like, well, businesses want to use it and they have malintentions, or, we have to have this super, sort of, approach to building AI that is not wieldy, and we need, 3-year long audits, and we need, all this access to stuff. And I think there's a happy medium there that will really allow technology to be built in the right way, but also in a way that can really help, the broader labor market in terms of, addressing some of these shortages. Because ultimately it's people that are unemployed. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's people that are hurting as much as anyone else, right? So.
Absolutely. Tan, what are your hopes or predictions for the future of recruitment?
I think recruiters have to move from where they are today to become transformation partners for companies to get a diverse talent pool. I think that's one. Second, I think recruiters have to look at the other end of people who are applying and look at it from the lens of a human being and see how they can become a coach for them, to say how an individual who is looking for a job can get a job in a particular area, in an area that they like to. And so becoming transformation partners for companies and for human beings is really the role that recruitment can play, because a lot of what they do today can be taken over by technology.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much. That is actually quite inspiring, because what we're talking about here is making this whole process more human, and actually putting the human at the center of all of it, which should be. And then sometimes, or so often, we use technology in the wrong way, where we actually take the human element out of it. So that was really refreshing to hear. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Anyone who ever wants to re-listen to this conversation, head to my YouTube channel, where you can see this one as well as many other exciting conversations. So thank you very much.
Thank you.